So right now we're waiting for Bill. He's in he's in City Hall right now, but he's not in the meeting room right now.
Are the other members of the TAC in attendance?
Jake and Art are here.
Thanks.
Hi, Joshua Akers is here.
Yes, welcome.
Joanne's here.
Are we gonna have the telepresence thing set up in council chambers?
I hope so. Bill's done it. I haven't.
Okay. I think possibly if we can all hear one another with the computer that's in council chambers, that we have to get started.
Yeah, we could do that. My computer's up and running. Bill was in the room and then he stepped out. So we're just still waiting on Bill.
Am I the only one who got booted out and then got back in?
I think so. Everyone else looks like they're still here.
Okay. I can only see you, Mike. Everybody else has got black screen and little, sort of like, I can't even tell what the icon. Oh, there we go. There's Josh. Okay.
Well, you
Okay.
know, when we're not doing anything, it seems appealing to be able to check your email without it being obvious that you're picking your nose or whatever. So, it's nice to turn off the video. I just figured I'd keep mine on because I don't have anything else to do at the moment. Just gonna get to it when we're ready.
I like that. I guess I could have eaten my other ear of corn.
You could do it now if you turned off the video.
No, it's too messy.
I know.
And I already had dessert. I already ate my grapes, so I guess I'm done. Juliana, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I was checking my email. I saw your email and I thought I included the minutes in with that big packet of stuff that I sent out to the committee.
No, they're not included.
No, I got the agenda, the report, a funny looking diagram that I can't really decipher, and then a later email about Air Street with some drawings that I wasn't really sure what I was looking at.
Yeah, that'll
I
be
know it's
explained
Air
later.
Street parking. Yeah, I figured you would explain it. But I didn't see any minutes.
Okay.
Did you receive the email that I sent with the minutes afterward?
Oh. That's a good question.
I
Oh,
think I
there it
replied
is.
all. Is that okay?
Yep,
Good.
there it is. Yep, but I have not read them yet. Okay, I'll do that now while we're waiting to start.
Yeah, it doesn't make up for them not being posted, but at least it gives us the ability to review them.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael, did you send them to Jody?
I only sent the emails that we had sent. I mean, I sent them to you and I sent them to Bill.
Okay.
So if it's it's also necessary to ensure that Jody is CC'd in order to get them posted, then that's something that the secretary could know.
Are you able to set up that might be easier for everyone to, because it says that what they'll be doing is listening and speaking off of my computer. Might not be able to catch everyone in the room. So I'm going to mute my computer just for now in case he comes on. We won't hear that feedback.
That sounds good. Thanks.
Are we going to begin?
Yeah, I think Giuliano said that he was muting because Bill was turning on the thing
Oh,
that lets
I
us
missed
see the
that.
people who are there. No, it's okay.
Thank you, Michael. I must have been reading.
That's all right. And then we want to make that one unmuted, the CC system, right?
And you can hear us.
That does it.
Thank you.
So Bill, you should probably take item agenda 1 and 1.1.
So I'm
Everyone, well, I mean,
okay,
so it hasn't been kind of, it's supposed to be done July 1st.
As acting chair, I'm going to call this meeting to order. The time is 6:46. Eli Morgan will be acting as our secretary tonight, take the meeting notes, and he'll share them so folks from the committee can evaluate them as draft. Our first item of business is for the Transportation Advisory Committee to go through the election of this year's chair and vice chair, and a secretary if anyone will volunteer. First, we'll do nominations for chair. Would folks like the nominations are open? Can I hear nominations from the committee members?
I would nominate Michael Hilling to be chair.
Does that need a second? Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Right. We have a nominee. Are there any other nominations? If folks didn't hear that, Art just nominated Giuliano Cecchinelli. Is there a second? And At this point, the only other member we have is Josh Akers. For no second, the nomination fails. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of Michael Hellion as chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? It's unanimous. Michael Hellion will be our new chair. Mr. Chair, may I pass the gavel to you?
I'm absolutely, by all means. I didn't realize that was the thing that took effect instantaneously, but I'm on the ball. All right. Moving on, are there any adjustments to the agenda this evening?
Through chair and, vice chair and secretary.
Oh, right. We got to have other officers. Thank you for reminding me where we actually are on the agenda. So for the position of vice chair, are there any nominations for someone to serve in that role?
This is Art. I'll nominate Julia.
I do. All right, thanks. That was Jake seconding, right?
Sure.
All right. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right, well, hearing none, we'll have a voice vote for the nomination of Giuliano Ceccinelli as vice chair of the TAC. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is unanimous. We have our officers. Do we have any need for a secretary? I understand that Eli has been gracious enough to step up currently. I think that if that works, my preference is in general that I think it makes sense to have, if staff is available, I think it's the most predictable to have staff do the minutes, because then there's a clear pipeline for publishing. But I want to make sure that that actually works.
So I would speak to that and say that part of the city's effort to support its committees is that we've made a conscious decision that we will actually assign a staff person to function as note taker. And Eli has graciously agreed to do that and will be a routine attendee.
All right. That works for me if it works for, if it works for the city. Does that sound good to everyone? Or should we seek a secretary position? It seemed like people were nodding, so I think. All right, great. Yeah, the folks in person are little to me, so I'm just first leaning in, trying to see the details. All right. Well, in that case, with our new officers elected, we can actually move on to the next item on the agenda, which is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to tonight's agenda?
I have a suggestion, Chairman. This is Jake. I would just would like to add an item to just welcome our new member and ask about any onboarding needs that he may have, and then also just to get a briefing on upcoming and pending items and the dates that they came in. I know I have quite a few on my list. We have Route 14 and Merchant Street intersection, the Berlin Street probability impact analysis, Lower Hill Street follow-up with Brent Gagne on the weight signage, Upper Hill Street traffic calming. It'd be nice to get an update on Upper Camp follow-up in terms of the striping. Brook Street, Seminary Street school traffic calming, and then I don't know if there's any others that are hanging out there.
Do you think that was that is for tonight? What you're saying?
Yeah, even just to know what's pending, I think would be helpful to put our working context, and then to see to think about prioritization of future agenda items, if we may need to have an extra meeting keep things moving along that can move along.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I was hoping to get whatever our pending list is that we're maintaining internally. As I am chair now, and then get that into a place that it is visible for everyone, so we know what is coming up in like in our listing. I think it might make more sense to be able to go over those things offline rather than try to figure that out this evening. At least that's my thought, since we do have things that are on this agenda that's and so I think I guess my preference would be to try to gather this stuff and make it available to the members of the committee, and not do it tonight.
That makes sense.
But I'll make a note of that, and I'm committing to putting that out as I'm sure everyone here is deeply familiar with Vermont's open meeting law. But one of the things that we are clearly allowed to talk about outside of meetings is what's on future agendas. And so I think this is going to be an easy one for us to be able to communicate, as long as we're not talking about something substantive we should do in a meeting. So I think I'm going to commit to getting this stuff in front of everybody in advance of our next meeting.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, but in terms of welcoming Josh, should we put that one at the end of new business? I don't want to make it seem the least important, but it might be nice to close on. Does that meet your hopes, Jake?
Sounds great.
All right, great. We'll have that as 6-3. All right. Next up, I know we didn't have a lot of time to review the minutes from the last meeting. If people would like to have an opportunity to look at those first, we could pass on approving the minutes during this meeting, and just push that off to next time to be approved with the minutes from this meeting at our next meeting. So just if people could sort of say which one they think makes more sense, then we can decide where to go.
Interject, Mr. Chair, in as much as I didn't support Chairman Ceccanelli by getting them posted, I'd recommend to the committee that they do that, and I'll get them posted as draft tomorrow, and that way they would be available with due deliberation and input from the public if need be.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So we will put this off with no action and take it up again at our next meeting to be grouped with the minutes from this meeting.
It just should be tabled, listed as being tabled.
Is it in this case? Regardless. Sorry, go.
No objection here to tabling the next meeting.
All right, it is tabled. It appears that we have no visitors in communications. If there's someone who's present who actually is a visitor, who's not addressing something that is currently on the agenda, this would be the opportunity to speak up. The assumption that there's not, we'll move on to old business. Under 5.1, we have the speed table of candidates item. I think I can't recollect what this is old business from, so I think we might need to get some some context for this.
So last year, the TAC recommended, I believe it was 6 speed tables that we do as a trial. We installed 4 of them. I should say 4 speed control efforts. So 1 on Circle, 1 on Ayers, 1 on Allen, and a speed hump on Park. We intended to add 2 additional speed tables. And so River Street was one. Beckley has come to the city's attention in the last 3 months with the sidewalk improvements. Perhaps there's been more pedestrian traffic, but we have more concern from residents in the north end about Beckley. And because it's such a long, straight segment coming in from the town, I was seeking input from the TAC as to whether or not it's an appropriate place for a speed table. At our last meeting, we had taken North Seminary Street between Shortcliffe Place and Thurston Place into consideration. And we are going to deploy speed humps, so similar to what's on Park Street, in that location as a trial. And so they are winter removable. But we would see whether or not they have an effect or if they produce objection for sound because of the closeness to Homestead Street. So we had some things we agreed to do from last meeting. I wanted to approach the TAC about River Street and Beckley tonight and get any feedback the TAC might have. Again, my plan truly was to try to do these based on data, but I don't have the data, and we did commit to try to do 6. Our experience with those that we placed were all favorable. I actually didn't receive any negative feedback, which is a very pleasant experience for me. Thank you. And so we'd like to expand that effort a little bit. I'm open to other locations of the tax suggestion. But again, I really want to get, I want to have the 6 speed tables out this year and go through another winter. We were very successful in the locations we had. None of them had any appreciable grade. I would be looking to install something this year that might be on a slight hill. So anything less than 5 to 8%, and see if we have issues that occur with hillside drainage. I don't expect any because we're leaving a small open area at the curb. But again, getting one out there and trying it and seeing if there are any issues would be very worthwhile.
So the River Street, Beckley Street, those are part of the original 6.
I believe so, yes.
And was the Circle Street one on the original 6?
Yes, Circle and Ayers, Allen, were in those original 6.
And so, Bill, what you're looking for from the TAC is basically saying yes or no, go ahead with this. I mean, or from the perspective of the committee, is that what you mean?
That's exactly the case. I'd also be interested. I answer to 1,000 masters, and one of the things that's helpful to me is to hear from folks in terms of what they think are valuable schedules. So I know I have to have this in before winter, but would foliage season, for example, be an important window of assessment? So should we say these should be in by mid-September? Advice like that from the committee as well. And I'll be seeking that same type of timing advice with the pop-ups for Berlin and Granite Street. So it's easy to say everything as soon as I can, but that gives everything equal priority because everything should be done as soon as I can. So I'm searching for either a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of latitude from the committee.
Well, it should give residents and the people traveling through time. So definitely fall.
Yeah. So that's helpful with making certain that I'm not putting these in close to November 1st when we could have bad weather. So again, I think with that advice, October 1st as a late target date.
River Street has a playground in a really bad corner, right? Like, I just want to make sure I'm thinking of the correct street. And if you're looking for an opinion on which street I think deserves, or not deserves, but is in need of a speed hump. I would say River Street more so than Beckley. I mean, Beckley's open, you can see down it. You have, you know, open availability if you're paying attention, but River Street is very windy. There's a playground, there's very sharp turns. There's that intersection that's right there too, that I'm sure people, as any other intersection that's in this city, are trying to drive through quickly in order to beat Main Street traffic. And just as with the other side streets that we currently have in the city that are we currently having speed problems with, I think we should have a deterrent to trying to drive through there too quickly.
Yeah, my understanding is that that Bill is coming to us with the proposal of installing them at both of these locations, and that the grade, I'm inferring that Beckley is the place to test the grade to see. All right, thumbs up from Bill. Okay.
And just to clarify, Bill, are you talking about both the speed tables and the pop-ups by October 1st, or just the speed tables by October 1st?
So when we'll discuss the pop-ups next.
Okay.
But this was for the speed tables, and I'd offer that, Josh, you described the correct location. We're looking to be about 200 to 230 feet from that corner. So we won't be at the playground, we'll be just to the south of the granite shed, but close to the corner, because we're trying to slow traffic down on the way into the corner when they're coming from the south, and have people, when they come around the corner, know that very soon they're going to have to be slowing down for that speed table. So that is the location, and Michael, you're right on point. Beckley, we're looking at a point somewhere between 400 and 600 feet into the city from the town, where the grade is right about 5 or 6% before it steepens up and comes down to the Route 12.
I have a question about following from what Juliana said about people being aware of this. Do we have a process for informing the residents of the area when we're installing these, or are they basically a low enough impact that we expect that people are going to get what the intention is?
We have been trying to do a public outreach for this via the city's website, so that people know that it's coming. We have typically not had a substantial reaction with the profile that we're using, and we intend to use that same profile. Again, if I were going to change the profile and increase it, I think that might be in order that we actually evaluate with the public what their concerns are. Right now I'm at a 2.5-inch profile on the speed tables. It gives a comfortable passing speed between 18 and 20. If I raise that profile to 3 inches, that comfortable passing speed will drop 3 miles an hour or so. And that's enough different than the speed limit that if folks aren't putting on the brakes, they will get a suspension thump out of it. And that also translates into nighttime noise. So we're staying with the same profile. We don't expect a lot. We'll do outreach via the city's website. There have been questions posed in the last 3 weeks about whether we should have advanced signage. And at this point, the reason we didn't place it in advance is because if they're traveling at or near the speed limit, traversing them isn't an issue. And if they're going faster than the speed limit, it's having the very effect that we want. It's intended to be unpleasant and for people to learn from it. And if I give them advance warning and they don't learn, I'm not accomplishing what I want. So I hope to stay with the signs as they are, which is posted at the actual speed table rather than in advance of them.
Is that a standard?
So speed tables are required by the MUTCD to be under a street light and to have the the triangular paint on them, but they aren't, and they're required to be signed, but the language does not say signed in advance. And so we think we're in compliance with the MUTCD as we are.
Because I see them at the school and they're all faced at the font. I just thought that, you know, keep them that way citywide might be helpful.
So I think if there aren't concerns about it, we could have a motion to proceed with Bill's recommendation.
I move to proceed with Bill's recommendation based on the information presented at River Street, back to the speed tables.
I'll second that.
Do we need any further discussion of the motion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? All right, this motion passes unanimously. We can move on to 5.2, traffic calming pop-ups, Granite Street and Berlin Street.
So the TAC had earlier been consulted about trying some pop-ups. And one of the things that I was looking for input on particularly is how long should a pop-up be in place? And what types of data collection do we do? And so with the pop-ups we did in cooperation with Local Motion. Local Motions had set up a website location to accept feedback on behalf of the city. They did not get a great deal of comment. You know, I believe the count was less than a dozen, but they did receive some feedback when we tried the North Seminary Street refuge in the crosswalk and Mill Street, where we continuously had tractor trailers running over the traffic cones. So we did get some feedback. I think it's valuable to do that, and the city has a subscription to a polling service that I believe the DPW could use instead of a place for people to give us feedback on those pop-ups. Again, we've also done, or I have previously done leafleting polls in the neighborhood or area where we're trying a traffic device. So basically a door-to-door distribution of a survey and ask folks to either drop it off at City Hall or mail it back. So I'm interested in what's the right duration for a pop-up to operate? And does the TAC have any specific ideas about what should be done? And I would tell you that I'm certain I will be doing some form of web polling. And I'd like to do some type of leaflet polling so that I'm getting people that are directly affected. Beyond that, I'm not planning, for instance, it's not uncommon if you have an intersection with a stop sign, to have someone there who literally stands there with a pad and asks passersby their opinion, but I'm not planning on doing that. It's labor intensive and I don't have staff to do that. Again, I'm open to suggestions. I'd welcome them, but right now I see those two primary opportunities: web-based survey and polling by leaflet in the affected neighborhood.
Thank you, Chair. So is the purpose of pop-up is to test something out before you make it permanent, right?
Right.
So is the objective to like leave it for a 3 or 6 month? Is there a standard, like you did 3-6 months and then you do a permanent installation after you have some feedback from a few months, or?
So typically it's a 6-week minimum. just because there's that much variation in traffic events. So if you don't have a holiday, for example, inside that trial period, you may miss a real specific change in pattern. Ideally, it is close to 6 months, and typically they won't, in the northern climate, run into the winter unless you're prepared to deal with winter consequences. Right now, the things that we're looking at, River Street, we were considering trying to do a walkway and a one-way southbound, and see how that affected traffic. Most of the truck traffic on River Street is in fact southbound, because if you go northbound, they can't make the turn onto Blackwell. It's a very tight radius uphill curve with a telephone pole right at the curb. And so even a straight axle truck can't make that turn without being in the opposing lane. So we're confident that making it one way southbound towards Burnham and Prospect won't be an issue for our truck traffic. On Berlin Street, again, we're really looking to try out a 10-foot wide path, so that we can look at whether we could pull the existing bicycle path, which is marked all along US 302, and it disappears at the Berlin Street intersection and becomes a share the road situation, bicyclists and cars in the active traffic lane. And so we'd really like to see if we can pull that off and take that out River Street. Again, so my interest particularly is with the TAC, like to see those done and within the next 4 weeks for a pre-winter trial. One of my thoughts is I'm going to be using a thinner paint application with the express intention that it does wear off. It could always be restriped, but if I place something at 5 mils instead of 15, I can assure you it will not make the winter. That between the plows and studded tires, you will not see it after December 15th. It will be completely gone. My thoughts were somewhere around September 15th, and we'd leave it in place until at least November 15th. The line would be worn away within a month of that, and we would get some very specific feedback by deploying them.
This agenda item, oh, sorry, was someone talking?
I was just gonna say, so one of the locomotion pop-ups were those the, on-street parking striping on Washington Street in between the old hospital and the History Museum, where they're better than the meters?
And we also tried a visual pop-up on the crosswalk. I did hear from V-Trans that those are not approved under the MUTCD, and so we did not redo that. We received only favorable comment, but FHWA reported that there had been accidents where people feared hitting a fixed object and stopped, and people behind them didn't pay attention. So those are out of our portfolio. I do have a request for a city arts group asking if they can paint different colors in the crosswalk. And I haven't gotten an answer from V-Trans yet. I do have to have the white bars, but as long as it contrasts, I don't believe there's a restriction against using other colors between black, other than black, yes, are available. So hopefully we will be able to do something with that. The member of the city arts committee had asked about that, and I hope to pursue that. Unless there's concern from the DAC. And I think the clear white pattern of I'll call it alternating white in color, rectangular pattern is in my mind a clear designation of a crosswalk, and whether there were other colors in it, as long as the white is there in the standard pattern, I think we're within our authority.
And so it sounds like there's three questions that you asked. One, what do we think about the Granite Street pop-up? What do we think about the Berlin Street pop-up? What's the correct duration and what type of collection should be collected? And
Yes,
then maybe a fifth question is, I'd like to know for maybe a future agenda item is what are the legal consequences or liabilities when the city chooses to a city municipality chooses to disregard the MUTCD?
so that's a good summation. I had actually written that I wanted to ask specifically for the duration advice, for schedule advice and data advice. I kind of drifted into the crosswalks, and out of that, I think is a good question. What does
Let's put that one on a future agenda. I think the crosswalks and choosing to violate the MUTCD. I think it's good, but it doesn't fit our item, right? I wanted to ask a question to clarify the agenda item, because it says Granite Street, but were you talking about an intervention on a pop-up on Granite Street? I didn't recall hearing that. I thought you were talking about River Street. Maybe I misheard.
no, thank you. You discerned a slip in one of the cogs in my mind. So River Street is intended to be a pop-up. Tonight, we were actually supposed to be covering Granite Street, where we would have the 10-foot wide path on the south side, and parking on the opposite side. Again, the street width there is 32 feet. I use the existing sidewalk plus 5 feet of pavement. I develop a 10-foot shared use path width. I can have 24 feet of pavement, and I'm left with 7 feet rather than 8 feet on the opposite side for parking for the residents on the street. Again, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm wishing I had supplied the pack with a diagram so that you could see the layout from the south edge all the way to the north edge of the street. But
I seem to recall there was a diagram of that was provided to a TAC meeting some time ago. Is that?
yeah, and actually that may have been previously approved. I apologize, I don't know the answer to that.
That's my recollection, but it was from before my time on the TAC.
Our Vice Chair Ceccanelli just confirmed that here. So there's no need to discuss Granite Street. Thank you, folks.
I have a question, Bill. With the 12-foot lanes on the River Street, that's the whole length, right? Curves and everything. Can your tractor trailers make that without encroaching? I know maybe a bigger one can because it pivots a little, but the track when you.
So the inside lane, southbound, a truck can not make it without some crossover on the south side of the corner. On the outside lane, if you're running north, the truck can make that because the radius of curvature is slightly longer, roughly that 10 or 12 feet. So the rear wheels will come onto center line, but not cross over.
Right, it just depends if you're in or out as you go down through.
Yeah.
Okay.
We probably shouldn't go too far on the River Street one because that snuck into our meeting. We can get that one in the future.
Yeah.
So what was remaining there, the question that came up was about duration of pop-ups. Can you refresh me exactly what the pop? I'm sorry for, I was trying to keep things straight. And I think, since I'm not keeping it straight. I wonder if that is the case for others. Remind me what the recommendation for the Berlin Street pop-up is.
So a pop-up is a temporary measure, usually line striping or low-cost, readily removed traffic management devices, such as cones.
Right. Yeah, I just meant the specific, what were, you know, what was recommended for Berlin Street in this item? That's all. No,
So the question was the duration and the schedule for doing it. Because again, I think the Berlin Street was approved for a one-way with the 10-foot path outbound in March. And I was unsuccessful in getting the manager's draft minutes for that. I still owe that to the committee, and perhaps that even suspends action on that until I get them. Make myself a note to do that again. Supposed to before now.
So it's one way, which direction?
One way outbound, and that was effectively for the emergency response.
From 302.
From 302 out to Vermont 62 to get to the hospital. And it would be closed to traffic inbound at Smith Street. And that allows all of the fuel supply and tractor trailers that actually supply RK miles, which have to route in the other direction to get there. So they go down Smith, Blackwell, and route back westbound on 302.
Yeah, I think I just want to raise again that I was present at that meeting, and I don't recall it being decided in the way that that you are recalling it. So I you know, the absence of the minutes is unfortunate, but that was again, it was before my time.
Again, I did some quick outreach to the owner of R&L, Cedric Sanborn, who was there at that meeting, and that was his recollection. He was adamant that it couldn't be one way between Smith and Vermont 62 because the importance of traffic for his business and for Irving Oil. And that was one of the concessions that came out of it. But let me revisit the minutes and get them out to folks and get that confirmation to you, or we'll bring the question back to the committee for reconsideration.
One other thing on that item that stands out to me is that when I was looking at the crash history for the city, the Berlin Route 62 intersection appears to be the most dangerous intersection in Barrie. I don't know if there's anything, I mean, I realize that's beyond the pop-up as a limited access.
Berlin at 62.
Yeah, at 62. But certainly, you know, keeping that the same without any modification, probably won't do anything to improve that situation. But I recognize the commercial interest.
Well, the state would do that. Anyways, that's beyond the city's.
That's not a class one.
Right.
Okay.
It is something that we have approached the state about. If you've seen the no turn on red signs that are there, when I went back and looked at the original plans, they are not in the same position. I believe the initial warrants that they were erected under were because the speed of Vermont 62 is substantially higher than the speed of Berlin Street. And so drivers on Berlin Street, if they pull in front of a vehicle moving on Vermont 62, aren't judging it based on the speed of Vermont 62. They're judging it from the environment they leave, which is a 25-mile-an-hour zone. And so those no turn on red signs weren't there to protect the crosswalk, as is VTran's current philosophy. They were there to prevent drivers from exiting Berlin Street into 40-mile-per-hour traffic. And so I've had residents for as many years as I've been here, reminding me that those signs are in the wrong place and that they're actually supposed to be turned to face only Berlin Street. And this is particular to Berlin Street coming towards Vermont 62 from the hill. I did approach V-Trans and I got nowhere with it. So they assert that it now, based on the warrants, the crosswalk is the basis for the no turn on red, whether the crosswalk is illuminated or not.
I kind of apologize for bringing up that tangent, because I know it's something altogether a different subject, but perhaps something for longer term planning by the planning commission and the transportation chapter to look at partnership with V-Trans on that. But it would be good to see the diagram, like layout of, which side the bike path is going to be on, and then it's, I don't know, was Representative Peter Anthony at that meeting? Because I recall
Yes, he
vaguely
was present.
about that. Okay.
Yes, it was.
So all that's left on this item for us to have a motion on is the timing. How long we would. So I think Bill was saying up to 6 months, definitely more than 6 weeks. Seems to me like 6 weeks is probably too short, but that's I will leave it to anyone who wants to make a motion on this.
Sure, I will. Art, I'll make a motion for the 6 months or more. And well, anywhere from, what'd you say, Bill?
I'd love to see something that's 2 to 6 months. I'm concerned about the winter season.
Yeah, okay.
And 6 months with an exception for winter would be fine. And it could be reinstated if warranted come spring.
Okay, 2 to 6 months time, and for the pop-ups. Is that all I need? I guess that's it.
And so just to be clear, this is a one-way from Route 302 to Route 62 with a 10-foot striped bike path on the western edge,
Or
the sidewalk side.
My understanding is this is not part of the motion though, because it's presumed that was dealt with in a previous in a previous meeting. So we're not actually talking about the design, we're just talking about the timing. Sorry to cut you off. Does that fit with what you were saying, Art? Did I?
I'll second it.
All right. Do we need any further discussion on that?
Just a quick question.
ahead.
So the motion, keep it so that there is, that you will not add pop-ups in the winter time for just this project or pop-ups in general?
so the motion as offered affects only this project. I'm not in any rush to try winter pop-ups.
Well, you never know, but I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
For more discussion on that, I wanted to let Bill know that the other day I saw a tractor trailer want to affect those half houses come down that street. And I'm thinking, what in heck are they doing? I mean, coming across the bridge, it took the whole bridge just about coming across. I guess they don't want to go down to the signal.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw him, I said, what the heck are they doing? And he was gonna turn left to go out towards Berlin,
Wow.
so. That's all.
All right, having a motion
So-
and go ahead, Joanne, sorry.
Before we vote, I'm having a hard time voting on something that I'm not really clear about what it is.
Yeah, me too. I'll-
Where there seems to be a lack of clarity around what the pop-up for Berlin Street is. I don't feel that I can vote to support a time frame when I don't know what it is that the pop-up's going to be. So I will either need to abstain or we need to go in a different direction on this for my benefit.
My my recommendation, Mr. Chair, would be to table this until we have a summary of those minutes. And if that means this postpones till next spring, that's the best outcome. Many members should feel fully informed.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It was not my, it wasn't clear to me that you were looking for the time frame for specifically these projects when you're coming for this ask. Yeah, I think that with that in mind, I believe that it makes the most sense to table this. Sorry for leading you into the motion, Art. We will table this until we can get some clarity on previous decision making.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
In that case, we can move on to 5.3, which is Air Street parking. What is it? And also in talking about this, I see that we have some illustrations. Can you clarify which old business this is related to?
We did an Air Street parking project in 2020, where we moved the parking from the south or east side of Air Street to the north or west. And this is that project right in the area of these three buildings was suspended. So we have, this is near the railroad tracks. Number 15 is Tender Loving Home Care. Number 17 is 802 Coffee. And number 19 is a private residence. And we did nothing with that existing parking last year because it is a difficult it's not really difficult, it's very contentious. The 802 parking has, 802 inherited or purchased a building that was a prior commercial establishment that has been driving across and parking in the sidewalk for the last 40 years. And every day between 200 and 400 trips of Spalding students walk through that location. One of the worst possible parking arrangements is to have people backing across the sidewalk and it's there. And that's actually why last year we didn't pick this up, because I've been working with landowners and lessees there for the last 6 months. And finally, I'm at the point where both of them want something done that will not harm them, but reduces the parking capacity of their abutter. And I'm preparing to just move forward with what I consider to be the best technical fix and to try to honor the city's commitments. So 802 parking, which was formerly Barry Auto Parts, had 6 pull-in spaces that faced the building. And so under the reconfiguration, they get 2 on-street in front of their building. They get the use of their existing common drive, 4 spaces in front of the building on their own property. And the sidewalk goes through and traffic won't be backing across it. They'll be driving in and out through the 802 property. And in terms of other accommodations, we're extending the parking where the Spalding High School driveway used to be, and adding 3 spaces that would be available for use by Tender Loving Home Care. So net, I think we gained 2 spaces by the extension. And I've done my part in trying to mediate the shared use drives and relied on them to be available for both parties for access and egress to their spaces off street. So what you see before you is a proposal to try to maintain or increase spaces in the street to stop any backing in or out of the drives to 802 Coffee. And I dare say that both business owners are relatively displeased with me, but both are served reasonably well because they don't lose any spaces. If
Go ahead,
the tax.
John.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the drawing here and I see the four, I'm a frequent flyer at 802 Coffee. And I see those 4 parking spaces that you've got right in front of number 17. How, if I park in one of those spaces, how do I turn around to get out? Am I backing into a driveway that I'm not aware of, or something
So-
that goes behind or alongside the building? I'm just trying to understand the logistics here.
So the 2 spaces that are on the Spalding side drive out across the existing, there's a drive there now that they also use as a loading dock area. On the,
So there's a driveway between the buildings, is that what you're saying?
yes. Yeah, and on the opposite end, there's a drive between 802 Coffee and Tender Loving Home Care.
Okay.
A deeded shared drive, which they could back into and drive across the sidewalk on that side.
I
So
see.
on the side towards South Main Street, and it's into the common shared use drive that are to be available to both.
Okay, thank you.
So Bill, in this diagram, it's space 15-2. How would someone park there and not use the sidewalk?
So the sidewalk actually exists between space 15-2 and 15-5.
But if everything's occupied but 15-2,
15-2 is, so they're using spaces for their employees. And so 15-2 is a deadlocked space. So if they have an employee who's there for the day, that's 15-2 in its fullest use. And if they need to get 15-2 out, they have to move either 15-1 or 3. Those 3 spaces are on the property owned by Tender Loving Home Care and under their full control.
and they were created within the city's right of way
No,
with a site plan permit from the developer review board.
So this is something that has been perhaps not ever legally sanctioned, but has been occurring for as long as I know. Unfortunately, they've also parked on the sidewalk, and this was an effort to force them off of the sidewalk out of the city right away. But your point is well taken. Whether it was ever lawfully obtained, I don't know. It's just a practice.
It would be just like having a lawn, people parking on your lawn,
Yeah, which is
if you
still
wanted them to.
a violation of our zoning regs. And it happens, but goes unenforced, and then they're parking in the right of way, and all of a sudden now the city's accommodating a parking space right next to a sidewalk.
That's the right of way line, isn't it?
So it is outside the right of way
It's
line,
outside the right of way line.
but
Oh, the yellow line's not the right of way line?
No, that property. Wow, that's,
It's a skewed property.
so there's some parallax in that, but as I'm looking at it, see on the other side, how the yellow line is nowhere near the back of the sidewalk?
yeah,
Yeah.
So there's some parallax there.
okay, that probably should be shifted over.
I see.
And so, when we actually did some field measurements to see if there's an 8-foot space between the building and the right of way, and there is. It does mean that they can't leave the car with a 3-foot space between it and the building. Again, this is kind of trying to accommodate something, and I can actually ask if there's any record of prior approval. My experience has been that there aren't good records.
Josh, go ahead.
It's probably.
With the building of these parking spots, these will be private parking for these 2 businesses though, and they will be able to regulate who parks in these areas. Am I correct in that question?
So all the spaces that are adjacent to the building are privately owned, so 15,
Okay.
1, and 17, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all on private property.
And
they
the parking, that's on the street.
is public parking and it can't actually be dedicated. Again, I could go to the parking committee and ask if they wanted to do permit parking, in which case we could sell permits for those spaces and number them, and then they could be directly allocated. But generally, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to leave the street spaces available for the public. And then this isn't an area that I expect our police department would want to meter because it's more than 3/4 of a mile from any other metered space. So best left is as just allowable parking, public domain.
I've
I
got
just go.
Sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Michael. I just foresee them using these spaces and trying to control the public spaces on the road because of how they are aligned with the business parking. I mean, I don't know I'm just putting it out there. I just see that happening.
I don't think there's really anything, it's not in competition with anything else except for maybe the high school, if it's. That's probably the only competition you're gonna have, so by default, they might just claim them anyway, because those are the only people. You know.
And the residential housing in the area though, because across the street is that Kirk Street parking, which is all dirt, of course, but during the winter, it's like 3 feet of snow and nobody plows it. So they're going to park on the street because it's open, but then the businesses are going to, again, say that is not their parking.
Well, they can do that, I suppose.
Yes,
But-
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna poke a little fun. Welcome to my world, because people associate the public parking near their residence or business as their property. But I think your point's well taken. They may wish to do that, but in fact, they will have no legal claim over it. There has been a history of some competitive placement of vehicles between the two neighbors. It is not a fun place to stand and try to have a conversation. So 17 does lease the parking lot across the street. We are looking at an accommodation to move the crosswalk away from the current mid-block placement and bring it to Kirk Street. And that would direct the crosswalk traffic right to 802. So we're looking at ways to try to get those folks on board with the change. The reason for bringing this to the TAC really is because it's part of an access management effort by the city, and we will be doing this in more and more locations where we try to take historic bad practice and figure out what we can do to make the best of it. And so taking away those polling spaces, I've already gotten pushback. I think it's worthwhile because the sidewalk, at the same time, if the TAC were to tell me it's been happening for 50 years, we haven't had anybody injured that anybody can recall. So what? Maybe I would change my vehemence in pursuing this. But I'm not hearing that yet. But again, that's why we have an advisory committee, so you can help me those right decisions.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like this is a beneficial change. I'm curious whether anything around this would lead to triggering a site plan review for the DRB. I mean, I'm just trying to think through what the ramifications are. I mean, if they don't change anything, I suppose there's, it won't. But I could see how this could potentially become messy.
Yeah, I suspect, and I'd have to look at our site plan triggers, but when you change parking configurations, you change access. I think that triggers a site plan review.
That's what I was thinking. I can't remember.
The DRB, and in some respects, they're better able, and you would have parties, advisory party status. I would think the advise on the configuration of this, and then that gives number 19 as an adjoining property owner notice that, you know, people could be from 17.2, 17.4 backing into their driveway, because I suspect they're gonna need 24 feet to get their car out of a 9x18 space and pull back out onto Air Street. Is 19 aware of this?
So 19 was affected by this speed bump, and I had had some conversations with him about parking. And one of the things that I had looked at, and I think it's reflected on that other plan, is in order to preserve some on-street parking for 19, I needed to slightly amend the parking available on the opposite side of the street. So the yellow curb extends on the other side of the street by, I've forgotten the name of that street, Keck or Kirk. So that yellow zone has to extend back roughly another 20 or 22 feet in order to leave the center line away from and provide space for 19 before we swing the yellow line over.
And 19 hasn't offered to extend an easement or anything for access.
So has not been approached by the folks in 17. So there is roughly enough space for them to turn out. And if the sidewalk is pushed out to the road, they'll encroach on the grass strip. Again, this isn't a survey, so is the grass strip actually owned by 17? Perhaps not, and 19 would be entitled to an easement from 17 to allow that to happen.
And the streets ordinance has been in effect a long, long time. And has always required a highway access permit from the city engineer. So if there's no highway access permit on record, they may have vested property rights for what they're doing on their property, but no vested rights for what's happening in the city's right of way.
And while I completely agree with you, I have routinely come up against the fact that we have drives that I don't understand how they could have been permitted, that are in place and have been in place for an extended period of time. And I'm not able to show them where it was never approved because our records are relatively weak. I'm good.
To me, this looks like a fairly good solution if number 19 isn't impacted. But it's still gonna be a shift for everybody, and they're gonna have to stripe everything.
Well, if we, oh, go ahead, Joanne.
One more question. On an earlier communication, we got a map that shows that parking on the right side where 15, 16, 15, 17, and 19 are extends all the way to 83, and that's allowed. Is that correct?
So that is not correct.
It's
You said-
not, okay.
83.
Yeah,
So that, and I apologize for that, that is the original parking pattern that was in place in Ayers. In 2020, we eliminated all parking from roughly 23 all the way to Spalding High School.
Okay.
Because that side of the road, there's a curve, and tractor trailers were very close to the parked vehicles because the trailer always moves to the inside. When we put the park on the other side, the trailer always moves away from the parked cars, and so it was safer for students to put them on the other side.
so the on-street parking is limited to that which is in front of 15, 17, and 19 then, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There's just one thing that makes me uncomfortable about this design is 15.8, 15.7 blocking, although I know that school access is temporarily blocked off. But if you're sanctioning 2 on-street parking spaces for a potential drive that could be reopened in the future, and there's not gonna be any leasehold agreements between these property owners in on-street parking
No,
spaces, so.
No,
That's just something, another thing where another property rights at stake where on-street parking begins to occur, then the school district has different plans.
It won't.
They won't
That'll
ever.
never happen.
And
So that will go away.
so that's what the facilities director has assured me. At the same time, I've been trying to encourage the owners of 15 to reach out to the school district and look at a short-term lease for the previously paved street that's no longer being used as parking. It's something I've encouraged them at least a half dozen times. And to the best of my knowledge, it hasn't occurred effectively. So,
I don't think they'll get it away, or at least ever doing
Yeah.
any of that.
and that's kind of where we're sitting.
I don't know if we are allowed to give opinions, but I think this is going to kill 802's business.
Hey, Bill, have they ever thought about just a drive-in, come in this way, pick up your stuff in the car? Just like a fast food restaurant, isn't it? Just coffee or donuts.
It's
They're gonna-
coffee. and-
It's coffee. It's
Right.
coffee and tea and muffins and that's it. You drive in, you walk inside, you get your thing, you jump in your car and you drive away. They need to have at least 4 or 6 spaces that are readily available to people. And Julia worked hard to get this, to get the, they used to just do roasting there and then they turned it into a coffee shop.
So Joanne,
unfortunate.
I was truly seeking that very kind of opinion, because honestly, it's a discretionary effort at enforcement, and I'm trying to make the best of this.
Yeah.
My intention is to try to find ways to not have economic impact on businesses, either one of them, but to do something that improves traffic. And I've actually talked with the previous owner and Tom Lawson, who owns that lot across the street, about, how can I make, in a manner that's even-handed, how can I make that a more attractive proposition? Because at one point, that same area was offered informally by Tom to the Tender Loving Home Care, until the relationships deteriorated so badly. So there's plenty of room there. And to the best of my ability, I want to make it work for all of them. But I'm hopeful that this doesn't, kill 802 Coffee. That would be a terrible outcome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
we're-
I think it's unlikely to have that substantial an impact. And I think that over time, it might even have a beneficial impact because it's creating a different kind of space in front of their store. And so I think, obviously we're not the business owner, and so we don't know what is best for them. But I think there's a pretty good reason to protect our curbs where they are intact, because it's going to make the foot traffic there, it's going to be a lot more pleasant for the people who are there, and in the end, that could result in
could benefit.
benefits. It could.
Yeah.
So I don't know either way, but I think, to me, I also want their business to succeed, but I think we gotta protect our curbs. Would be my sort of thinking a big picture for the city. That's where I would come down.
And that's why I asked about the on-street parking, because if there were more on-street parking on that side of the street, I think it would be a non-issue. But there isn't. And I to be honest, I've never tried to cross Ayers Street on foot. And the few times that I've gone there by car, there's not a lot of traffic. So maybe it's not an issue to park across the street.
It's not so bad subjectively, especially because there is an effective speed table, right there.
Right, exactly. Okay. So that's the angle that we need to use with the business owner.
Well, whoever is in that role, I suppose. Sorry, Bill.
This helpful discussion, folks. very helpful. It inspires me to go out again one more time.
Would, is there a motion you're looking for on this one, or do you want to let this one, one rest and think about it?
So I didn't need a motion officially. I think the advice of the committee has been very helpful. And I'm prepared to do this under the DPW authority and having heard fair concerns, but no objection, I don't think a motion is truly required.
It's true. My feeling is that I would just like to have it be on the record. If, essentially, if you're gonna go forward with it, it just, so if if anyone would like to make a motion on this agenda item, I await one. All right. Well, if there's not one, then that is fine also. I think we can leave Bill to his own devices then, in the absence of a motion.
Well, I'd be comfortable making is just support for Phil's efforts to maintain pedestrian access and not have blocked sidewalk, and to improve the general safety of a major corridor to the school, and appreciation for an attempt to find good solutions that meet the needs of protecting the city's right of way and the adjoining business owners.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? I didn't hear all of the votes on that one. It sounded like okay, all right. I was trying to keep count in my head. Yes, that motion passes. Yeah, and thanks for making that, drawing that together. Next up, we're on new business. We have city streets weight limits. 6.1. I don't know what is meant to come out of this, and so seeing that we are at 8 o'clock now, I don't know that we should have an open-ended discussion, but I don't know what the intent is either. So if we can clarify, what we want to get out of this, that would be great.
This was just in part to some of Jake's emails, Mr. Gagnon, and discussing not just Hill Street and Washington Street, but other streets in general that we might include in that weight limit category.
Yeah, my feeling is that we do want to serve this correctly by having a discussion, but also that we might want to be bringing to the committee, it's a little bit more context than just saying the discussion. So since this is something that you're looking for, Jake, what is your preference for how to proceed tonight?
Well, I first want to thank Eli and Bill for doing a little bit of background research on traffic calming and weights. It looks like there's some research about the traffic calming, and I know we've heard a little bit about the weight filings that happen once a year, right, Bill? With the Department of Motor Vehicles, those filings have to happen in February. The city has not done any weight enforcement or filings for maybe a decade.
I can find no record of them actually ever having been done. And I know for a fact when the state did South Main Street, that is when the 16,000-pound sign on Lower Hill Street disappeared. The state took it down and removed it because it wasn't lawfully recorded. So they removed it without any request to us.
So Mr. Gagné lives on Lower Hill between Washington and South Main, has just noticed a lot of truck traffic, 16-wheelers going down that street. Noticed that the sign was up, has been taken down. I noticed, former city councilor Maurice mentioned that maybe there's still some signs that are up around the city, but I think there's widespread non-compliance. The police department has not it has the equipment, but has not had the legal authority, as I understand it, to do any enforcement. And I think obviously this is the type of public policy decision that affects a lot of commercial trucking, as well as residential service vehicles. And it's not an easy button issue. I think it's one that needs a kind of a comprehensive look at the transportation system and where the city wants to identify trucking routes. It's probably a consultant project. I know, Bill, you had looked at Montpelier's street classification plan. That was done with Better Connections money with V-Trans and ACCD. I think that, that's kind of my interest, is that not that we just start picking off random streets and saying, this is for trucks and this is not for trucks and this is a Wayland or what, but it needs a planned approach with feedback from our commercial trucking enterprises and as well as the neighborhood residents that are impacted by it, and thinking about what are the financial consequences to the city, which are very real when we only get $147,000 from the state for a transportation system. And it costs many millions to run it. So that's where I would like to see this committee maybe just spend an adequate amount of time talking about what we might like to see in a plan like that. I know, Phil, you mentioned some in your department head priorities, a similar kind of looking at a planned approach.
So one of the things that in preparing for this meeting we talked about is the fact that we need to bring some resources to bear for this committee. And so that was partially behind Eli building a list of resources, because this is an important decision for us and we need to be able to accommodate commerce. But what does that mean, and how do weight limits tie into that? And how should the city's investment in streets particularly be made? So residential streets are fine with a 2.5-inch pavement thickness. They rarely see trucks over 40,000 pounds, with the exception of fuel trucks when the ground is frozen. And so 2.5 inches of pavement is adequate. At the same time, as soon as I put trucks on that, if I don't bump that to 3.5 or 4 inches, I can assure you a pavement life of less than 10 years, perhaps as little as 5, once I start running full state weight limit on it. So defining what we will build and operate as truck routes is really important for the city's paving program, as well as the happiness and comfort of our residents. Because if I'm building it wrong, I'm only going to be back there sooner, and people would really, they'd like their streets to be in good condition, but not have me visit them with the dust, noise, and annoyance. So the less I do that, the better. So in my mind, the two are linked. That weights are something we need to pursue. We need to understand what they mean. And the trucking that relies on those weights needs to be laid out in a strategic way so that we can get throughput. But equally importantly, our citizens always have access to what they need. And so if that's a certain class of fuel truck, let's understand that and be able to build that into our planning.
Yeah, so I think our question is, how do we take some action to make sure that we're continuing to move things forward? And so, if what we're asking for is to, to line up like grant applications to get a consultant to help create this plan, then I think that is a concrete first step that we can take. So, but to me, I don't want to get stuck at the point where we're saying like, yeah, we need to have a plan and not be moving that, continually forward. And so the question is, what can we do today? In this agenda item that's going to help us get a little closer.
I think we can acknowledge the issue of, just saying that I feel we do need the weight limits. I agree. So is there a way that we could move a motion to that? I don't know what that looks like, Michael.
And maybe one other thing that I would add is that, the city has a lot of Recovery Act funding. This body could make a motion to council to use a portion of that as match to leverage additional grant funds to do a citywide traffic calming and freight plan for the city. Is that consistent with some of your department goals, Bill, or your?
Yes, that would be very helpful, actually, to put that forward.
And I would add, oh, sorry, Bill. I would add that a streets classification is in the municipal plan. So I'm saying, hey, the tax should help create one of those. So I think we've got the pieces in place to say, as Jake said, let's use some of this money to get this done. I did not restate your pseudo motion in a good way at all.
So let me I'll take another swing at it. I would move Transportation Advisory Committee approve a recommendation to the City Council and Department of Public Works to allocate American Recovery Act funding, a portion of that, to match a state grant to complete a citywide traffic calming and freight plan that looks at the city plans, functional classifications, the municipal plans, classification of the road system, and financial impacts and so forth.
Sounds clear. We have a second.
I'll second that if I have the ability. I know I'm new.
You certainly do.
Okay, good.
All right, having a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I just like to make sure that Eli got that all.
Gotcha. I got everything so far.
Fantastic,
The only
thank
thing
you.
I didn't hear, I just wanted to make sure, was after Jake had mentioned the ARPA funding, he said the road classifications, traffic calming, and weight restrictions. I just wanted to make sure that those were the three main categories for that.
I think, Eli, that the road classifications is a part of it, but there was a reference to the city plan so that we can start out with what the city's already adopted. So the emphasis on road classification went away, and there was the reference to the city plan in Jake's motion that really was trying to take those two thoughts and combine them, because there's an existing street classification system in the city plan. Is that
There's not actually. Sorry to jump in. The municipal plan says we need one. And so I think that it didn't go away, but the municipal plan is the sort of the backup for saying, this is part of it. So sorry to jump on and redefine again.
So that's how it, Eli.
But so my understanding, sorry, I didn't hear what you just said, Bill. My understanding for Eli was that it was is correct, but that the classification says that it is from the municipal plan, that it asks for it. I just made it worse. The way Jake said it was great, but Anyway, but I think that that covers the meaning of it, if we've captured that. All right, so back to where we were. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right. Having none, all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I couldn't hear all of the yeses. It sounded like it was enough to pass. So we'll say this motion is passed. Unless there's someone in the room who says no, it wasn't. So thank you. Our next item is 6.2, which it seems to be the idea of adding deliberative sessions to our meetings. Is that the intent?
So that is something that I had asked Vice Chair Ceccanelli to consider, because sometimes we have requests that are thoughtful and intense, but that in that moment, it's difficult to actually fully vet an item. And so by taking a little bit longer before we arrive at a motion and decision, that it might actually result in better decisions. It's a concept, and I don't want to prevent us from, processing decisions quickly, but at the same time, if I'm not sufficiently articulate and I don't present useful information to the committee and the committee makes a decision, I'm in a worse place to come back and articulate it well enough for the committee to receive it and then ask the committee to reconsider. So I don't know that this is an action item tonight, more than it was a question about how do I deal with complex issues and my inability to necessarily flesh them out fully for the committee before the committee feels compelled to make a decision. And that was the concept was, should we have something where folks could say, should we deliberate before basically calling the motion? And again, I don't know Robert's Rules of Order well enough. I know that there's always that opportunity for discussion, but I don't know if there's a time for reflection within that. That's really, and I welcome anything Juliana wanted to.
Well, I mean, the other avenue is an executive session. I don't think an executive session fits that model. So say you have someone who comes in as part of any street item that they have or public comment. You have two groups who want a speed table, and you agree that the first person who steps up gets their speed table, but then the second person, might have an equally great need and might not get it because we have one speed table left to put out. So it's just a way to get the input from the two respective speed tables and then decide which one's the best fit.
One of my thoughts on executive sessions and deliberative sessions, and both have specific purposes under 1 VSA 312 and 313. They're both be not public sessions, and generally advisory bodies don't have the right to do an executive session or a deliberative session, because in deliberative sessions are preserved, as I understand it, for quasi judicial functions, which we don't do. But I hear what you're saying is like, how do you not pressurize a decision that may face resource constraints at one meeting? And perhaps there's an opportunity to think about the agendas from a way like a 3-point of contact, or there are 2 points where there's an introduction, one meeting, and a decision at the following meeting table. And you can always stay with me too, so, but sometimes when there are people in the room and they want a decision that night, you know, you feel that you have that pressure to make a decision. But if it's part of your normal practice to say, we're gonna get an introduction, and then we'll make a decision. But also, I think, you know, to the extent that we can get information before it comes, I think that also helps us come prepared to do a little research and weigh the trade-offs and make a better decision. Those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not sure that we would have the authority to have a deliberative session based on, my knowledge, which is not that awesome. But I think I'd like to try first, making sure that we get enough advance information to, to be fully informed. And I agree with what Giuliano was saying about if we've got 2 things on the agenda and, if we say yes to the first one, but we can't say yes to the second one, then we should have some way of, avoiding that. But I think we're probably going to know what's on our agenda and be able to look at those 2 things. I hope we can do that without having an extra process step. But I think we'll, my preference would be to see our first thing that we try to make sure that we're making good decisions is, communicating more context further in advance. And so that's, what I say we'll try this first, and then we can try other process stuff as we identify problems, would be my thought.
Sorry, as with my own situation, obviously, because I was in the last meeting, and I feel like this, of course, circles back to that a little bit. I felt like how we handled my own situation with Seminary Street in our last meeting is a great example of how we could resolve these issues, which is like try a temporary solution before we throw down a permanent solution, so that we don't use so many resources so quickly. So having temporary bump as a speed control that's temporary to see kind of what's the outcome. We just continue to do that so that when these come up, we can say currently the temporary speed bump is on Seminary, and once we go through the cycle of that, we can move it to the next process. And having those 2-step solutions resolves of trying to put down a permanent solution for somebody's problem.
I think this is a good point that we can have case by case. Different problems have different, are expressed different ways, and we can use different strategies to resolve different problems. So the resource decision problem that that we're talking about, obviously, there's a bunch of different ways, and I'm glad that it worked out for Seminary Street. And I think that would be my preference. And so I would say that we don't add deliberative sessions for the time being. But we continue to see well, where are we failing? What are the things we can improve to make that better? So it does, is there, I guess, Giuliano, does it seem like getting more information to people, to give a little bit more context in advance, is it at least approaching the same problem that you're thinking about? Or is it just totally separate?
The sessions, it runs into what Jake said. It's actually probably not the right wording for it. But it also just runs into if you have 2 groups who come in who are not on the agenda, the likelihood of that happening is rare. But, if it was just left in, like some executive sessions are left in as needed, and it's just a placeholder for that to happen. So if we could just come up with a better wording for it instead of deliberative, and just add it in as needed, I think that would be good.
Yeah. Well, for myself, I would say if 2 groups come in that they're not on the agenda, I would suggest that they don't get anything until we get them on the agenda. And because the fact that they came in is great, and I really want to but we want the public to know what is being discussed. And so we would say thank you very much. Your input is really valued. We're going to get you on the agenda. So, but at least for, in that case, we don't know. So all kinds of things can happen, I realize.
Something that Steve had on the agendas where it was an emergency. It was taken off the agendas, but Steve always had them on the agenda listed as a emergency. I can't remember when it's actually designated, so that could also be used.
Are you recommending that there be a private session?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's why I didn't want
Okay.
executive, because we don't do that. I think deliberative is probably the wrong word to use.
Just to have more deliberation time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, sorry, someone was going to say something. I was going to say, is there an appetite to make a change along these lines? Or should we continue on and see where we run into problems? Or I'm curious where the committee ends on it.
I
Go
think
right
having
ahead.
having more context around the agenda items will be very helpful. I know for myself, I like to prepare in advance of the meeting, and like I did a little bit of driving around in the last few days to look at these streets that we were talking about tonight. But because I wasn't really 100% clear what about these streets we were going to be talking about, it wasn't so helpful. So I think that's really helpful. And then I guess we all need to take responsibility to have more discussion. If we feel like discussion is really what's needed, we're committee members. Isn't that our role? Ask questions, talk about things. If, I still feel like a newbie, I relate to Joshua. I still feel like a newbie too. And so I'm going to ask questions because I need to understand better. And I also need to get a better feel for what my role really is. So when Bill says things like, thank you for that feedback, that's really helpful to me. And it helps me think a little bit more clearly about why I'm here and what the job is for me to do on this committee. So I'm willing, I guess that's a really long way of saying I'm willing to keep going and be mindful of this. And I would encourage Bill that if you feel like, we need to discuss things more, say that to us, and
I think that sounds great.
maybe that will help.
All right. What I would say for now, I'm not going to add an extra not deliberative contemplative session, but we'll keep an eye out and we'll see. If we do see something that suggests that we need some extra process, then we'll get that. So I think absent anything else for this item, we'll close out the agenda item without any action. And move on to number 7, other business. Is there any other business? All right, I'm assuming there's no other business. All right, let's consider our next meeting date. Is September 15th good for people?
That works for me.
All right, so let's have it on our calendars. Our next meeting date will be September 15th. Coming up next is our roundtable. Sorry, I can't resist typos. Anyway, roundtable. I'm gonna rather than call on folks, I would just ask if anyone has anything to bring to the roundtable. If not, then I think we can move on. Jake, go ahead.
I just wanted to share that they're on Wednesday, August 25th, starting at 2:30 p.m. There's a session on transportation for the All In for Barrie Community Forum that's put on by the Vermont Council on Rural Development. The transportation session is going to be at the Church of the Good Shepherd at 39 Washington Street. So there's 3 different tracks and 3 different locations. as well as a community dinner and ending with looks like a virtual Zoom forum. I'm not sure if there's a Zoom forum for all the sessions, or if the expectation is that people will be there in person. I need to look into that. But there is a session on transportation, and I thought that'd be a good one for all of us to attend if we can attend.
You know, I just realized I skipped 6.3 because I was looking at the agenda that was sent out. So sorry, Josh. 6.3 was welcoming Joshua Akers to the Transportation Advisory Committee. I blew it. Yeah, I don't know. I wrote it down and then I like moved the piece of paper it was on. So anyway, yeah, very glad to have you on the committee. Thanks for stepping forward. Yeah, is there anything you'd like to say and welcome?
No, thank you for letting me be here. I am not usually super opinionated in the contrary of tonight, of course. I feel like I've said a lot, and I was definitely going to try to stay as quiet as I could this meeting to kind of watch it play out. So please just, be patient with me, especially if I, speak out of turn, just let me know, because I don't want to do that. I want to try to navigate as best as I can to support you guys as best as I can.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Sorry to cut into the roundtable there. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to?
Michael?
Go ahead, Art.
I know the Transportation Advisory Committee here is, it's like, to me, it's like transportation AOT, except they have more power. We're just advising, but I do recognize that the island out here at the park, not the park itself, but the little island between 14 and 302, it's decorative with all kinds of signs, all illegal.
Yep.
And they should be taken down. You have off-site signing, off-premise signing, which is illegal to begin with. There's no business being occurred in that area. And I thought the city ought to do something about it.
I think Heather Granfield is the person to tell. Am I right, Bill? It's not clear to me where enforcement falls on some of these things. I'm sorry yeah. I can email Heather if that's what you would like also. I mean, I don't want it to be like, hey, Art, call somebody. Yeah, but I'm also frustrated. I'll mention that it came up. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I'd offer that that Art's point has been duly noted, and that it requires no more action on his part or your part.
I will do nothing then. Thanks.
Moving to remove those signs, we are in kind of a 48-hour hiatus where we're contacting the folks and telling them if they're not done, we're removing them. It's just as a matter of courtesy, we're not pulling them up yet, but we're going to reach that point and they can retrieve them from us, and it will occur before the end of this week. So point is well taken.
It's like election signs. Take them off.
Yeah, I really appreciate bringing that up. And I brought it up at council last week, and there's a V-Trans responsibility, but there's a local responsibility under our sign ordinance.
Yeah.
And certainly organizations, the city funds,
It's a state law.
shouldn't be putting them up.
Sign law.
And, as Lincoln said, law is only good advice if it's not enforced, so.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Well, if we've got no other tables to round, I will hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Sounds like everyone. We are adjourned, folks. Thank you all. Have a very nice evening.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah.